This is Ali coming at you live from LOTT Studios, and we're here with our first episode of a new segment called Q&A. It wasn't supposed to be coming anytime soon, but it came a little early because we got special guests from Spring Valley Elementary. Stay tuned. What do you like about writing? Good question. What I like about writing is that it's a good way to express how you're feeling. It's a good way to get things out. They say energy is not created or destroyed. It's just transferred. So if you're ever having, a good day, a bad day, you're excited about something, you're feeling really emotional, a good thing to do is to start breaking out your hobbies. I like to write. So, with me, if I'm having a good day, I might write. If I'm having a bad day, I might write. If I'm having a day where I'm excited about something, I'm anxious about something, I might write. If I'm disappointed, I might write. So pretty much what I'm saying is that what I like about writing is that it's an effective way to release whatever energy you might be feeling at the time. And sometimes you want to keep that energy, inside you. But if you're looking for a way to get it out, writing is a good way. Hobbies are a good way. Sports are a good way. Music, dance, those types of things are all a good way to, get energy out. How did you learn to write? Good question. Same place as you are, school. So make sure you listen to your teachers, math, reading, writing, science, social studies. All right, get all the information. But in terms of writing, I learned in school early on. I switched high schools after my sophomore year. My parents thought it was in my best interest to put me in a different school, so that was what they did. But before then, I was a big math guy. I love math. And then once I switched schools, we did a lot of writing at my new school. So I had a very vivid imagination. I was very imaginative. I took a film writing class, and in that class, I kind of learned how to write creatively, because we would have to write scripts. We would have to write stories. So writing those scripts, writing those stories kind of gave me the preparation to put my imagination in word form. You know what I mean? So I would say if you got a big imagination, pick up a pen, pick up a notebook, pick up a keyboard, pick up something. All right, get those ideas out. How long did it take you to write your first book? Another good question. That's a good question. It varies, though. It varies. My first book, I actually started when I was a senior in college. I didn't get too far. I got maybe, 3 or 4 pages in. But the only reason that I started writing it in the first place, like I said, it was my senior year. So something about these senior years. It was my senior year of college. I was getting ready to graduate, and I was just thinking about, how much fun I had, the memories I had. And I said, I need to write some type of book about college life, Maybe not specifically about my college life, but just about college life in general, because I don't want to forget my memories similar to those. So I got started writing. Like I said, that was my senior year. I didn't get too far. I only wrote maybe 3 or 4 pages, and then my first year teaching came around. So that was April 2014. I picked up that same story. I was reading it one day, and I said, it was spring break. I said, it's not bad. So it was actually around this time of year. 7 years ago. So I said, not bad. I gave myself a pat on the back, and then, I picked it up and kept going. That was April 13th, somewhere around there, 2014. And then I finished that story, my first book, July 22nd, 2014. And then it was published the next November 2015. What was the first book you ever wrote? First book I ever wrote was Michigan International University. It's set in Michigan, mostly in my hometown, Highland Park. In Baltimore, there's some parts in Texas. It's a lot of different places in the country that the book takes you. But it's about a superstar baseball player. His name is Isaiah. He pretty much loses everything in the prime of his career. So when he's at his biggest, when he's at his best point, he made a lot of reckless decisions, a lot of irrational choices. He made a lot of decisions that he shouldn't have. All right. And then one day it just all catches up to him. And he pretty much has to reshape his life based on, the decisions that he's made in the past. So the book pretty much talks about, how he got to that point, how he's trying to rebuild it. His children grow up throughout the course of the book, so it kind of shows you their path as they grow older. Just an informative book about Michigan. It kind of tells our story. It kind of tells, what people should think about or what people see when they're, right here in Michigan. Is it hard, and how do you think of writing the book? Hard. I don't know if it's hard, but it is challenging. Those two words might be synonymous, but it's a little difference there. With hard, I kind of think of things as something that you can't really do yet, and you're still, learning. Challenging is something that you know how to do, but it's just a long process, so it can take a long time. So I would say writing is more so challenging than hard. And the biggest challenge is just the time. It's a big time commitment. It's a long process. So I would say that the most challenging part is just sticking with it, sticking with the process. And how do you think of writing books? So with that second part of the question, that kind of changes too. So that varies. My first book, this book here, I did an outline. So every chapter, I broke it down. Right, every chapter I broke that chapter down into bullet points, and I talked about the things that I wanted to discuss in those chapters. All right, and then as I wrote, I just looked at my outline, I looked at the chapter, looked at the bullet points, and then I started writing, the information. Some other stories I've written, I didn't do an outline at all. I knew how the story was going to start, I knew how it was going to end, but that middle part I had no clue. The middle part I found out, what was going to happen as I wrote. So it really depends on the process, depends on the book. And it probably depends on, the writer. So that question really varies. What do you write about? What do I write about? So my genre, that's a genre-related question. My genre is historical fiction, realistic fiction, short stories, and then children's books. So those are the 4 different things that I write about. As far as realistic and historical fiction, with that, it kind of had to do with me not being able to find reading materials after a certain point. So my favorite author growing up was a woman named Sharon Draper, and the reason that I liked her book so much was because the characters in those books were kind of like people who I went to school with. Maybe not all of them, of course, but it would be people from the story who I could identify with, people from the story who sounded like people who I went to school with. So what I wanted to do was pretty much do the same thing that Sharon Draper did for me, because like I said, once I got to a certain point, once I got maybe 20, 21, 22, somewhere in my early 20s, I couldn't find those stories anymore. I couldn't find realistic fiction stories, historical fiction stories. So I started reading a lot of information texts. All right, so that's nonfiction. But I was pretty much forced to do that because I couldn't find. And I'm not saying they're not out there. I just wasn't able to locate them myself. But the reason that I started writing was, like I said, I just wanted to give readers something they could relate to. So the students of Michigan, the students of California, Maryland, those other states I mentioned, they'll be able to relate to these books because they're going through similar experiences as the characters. Did you have to be a certain age to publish your book? Nope, not at all. Absolutely not. I was 28. I published mine on my 28th birthday. But I have a friend who's also a writer, and he helped his son publish a book when he was in 3rd grade, I believe. So he was a 3rd grader with a published book. But he had help. In order to, write a book, you need a lot of willpower. So that means being able to push through. When you get tired, you need to be self-motivated. So that means that people shouldn't have to say, hey, did you finish your book? Hey, get up, finish your book. You have to be the one who gets up and get busy on your own. And you have to be patient. You got to have a lot of patience. So if you got patience, motivation, self-motivation, and willpower, you can get it done as long as, you got the resources. If you have somebody who can help you get that done, go for it. How do you choose your pictures? Good question. So with the pictures, that's a team effort. That's a collaborative project. And with the pictures, it kind of goes by what scene in the book captures the most emotion. What scene in the book might summarize the book the most? What scene in the book is something that you might be able to visualize? All right, and that's what you want to use for your pictures. So this picture here, these 2 buildings are actually real buildings in my hometown, and they were both burned up. But we used to walk past those buildings every day going to school. So for me, that was just a way to use art to relive some moments from my childhood. Use art to resurrect those burned down buildings. So The pictures, they could be symbolic too. It really depends on you. So for me, these were symbolic pictures that I used. And on the back, that's my nephew's hand reaching for the moon. And there's a part in the book where it says, somewhere in the world, there's a child reaching for the moon. So a lot of times the pictures that I use, they're either symbolic or somehow they kind of summarize the story. What is your best book? I don't know. I don't even know if that's a question I'm allowed to answer. What is my best book? I'm just going to say my first book, because a lot of people say that you can never duplicate the passion, the energy, the drive that you had to finish your first book. So I'm gonna just go with the first book. I'll say that's my best book. But honestly, I don't know if I have a best book. I like them all. How many books have you written? So far I'm at 11. I've written 11 books. How many books did you publish? So far I've published 4. I have 4 published. Michigan International University, Wake Up Little Lion, Nobody Cares, and Bad Move. I was also editor-in-chief of a magazine, but that doesn't really count as a published book because that was for sure a team effort. How do you learn to be an author? Good question, because that's a lot different from how do you learn to write. How to be an author? You have to read. You got to do a lot of reading. You got to read. Just to write this one book, I probably read 20 books, easy, and I probably bought 30 just for that one book. When you're writing, like I said earlier, you can't fluff it. You got to make sure it's detailed. You got to make sure it's precise. Whatever you're saying, you want to be able to get your point across. All right. So in order to be able to write, you have to study. You have to read authors' works, but you're not reading it for enjoyment. You're reading it to study. All right. So you have to see how paragraphs are structured. You got to see how sentences are structured. You have to see how they do dialogue when people are talking. And by that, what I mean is, let's say such and such said, such and such said, such and such said, such and such said. You don't want to just keep saying say it. So while you're reading these books, you want to see how are they wording these things when other people are talking. Sometimes they say said, sometimes they say replied, sometimes it's just a quote. Sometimes you're setting up a scene with a quote inside of there. So there's many different ways to, structure your writing. And in order to be an author, you have to read. You gotta read. What inspired you to become an author? Good question. Really good question. So with that, I answered part of it already. Part of it being just once I got to a certain age, it was hard to find reading material that I could relate to. So that was one of my inspirations. Another inspiration or another thing I'm inspired by are world events. So things that happen in the world. If I'm seeing something that's constantly on the news, constantly all over the place, eventually I'm going to find a way to put that into a story. If it's some social unrest going on in the world, eventually I'm going to find a way to put that into a story. So pretty much as a writer, it's our responsibility to document the time. So a lot of my writings are inspired by real life events, things that happen in real life. And the last question is, what is your favorite book you've written? Good question. Favorite and best, those are completely different. So my best book, like I said, I don't know if I can answer that. I'll let somebody I know answer that one. My favorite book, I would say my favorite book has to be Headed West. So that book isn't out yet, but it is my favorite. I don't want to say too much because it's still in production. And contractual reasons, I'm not really able to right now, but Headed West is probably my favorite story. Thanks a lot, Spring Valley. Great questions. You all brought back a lot of memories. I also have a comment. It will be fun to write books and be an author. Good to hear. Hopefully those questions gave you all some insight, and if that's something you really want to get done, something you're passionate about, let your teachers know, and it might be something we can get done. Peace.